Here are the topics that will be covered in the President's Revision video. This video will focus on the President's power in foreign policy.
In order to determine who controls foreign policy, let's do this exercise. On the screen, I have two iconic photographs of the last 2 decades. The picture on the right is of the White House Chief of Staff, Andrew Card, whispering to George W. Bush. Bush had just found out about the attack on the Twin Towers. The picture on the left is from May 1st, 2011, and it shows Obama and his administration in the White House Situation Room, watching the killing of Osama bin Laden. These photographs tell us quite clearly that when it comes to foreign policy in a crisis, it is the President, not Congress, who is in charge. The lines of authority are less clear, however, when it comes to non-crisis foreign policy making, and the Constitution does help much in this regard. It gives the power over foreign policy to both branches of government, and a number of the constitutional provisions are somewhat vague. There are specific powers that the President has when it comes to foreign policy. Let's break them down. There's the appointing and sending of ambassadors, which suggests that the country is legitimate. So a President's power is also to recognise foreign government. For example, in December 2014, Obama restored full diplomatic relations with Cuba, and an embassy was re-established in 2015, although not every member of Congress supported this idea. Another example would be in May 2018, where Trump moved the American embassy in Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Another of the President's powers in foreign policy is the negotiation of treaties. This is limited by Congress as they have to consent to the treaty, but they can get around Congress with executive agreements. Obama did this with the Iran nuclear program. In November 2013, he lifted sanctions placed on Iran as they agreed to limit its development of nuclear technology. Trump did the same when he withdrew from the program in May 2018, but it still demonstrates his use of executive agreements to negotiate a treaty. Another foreign policy power that the President has is the Commander-in-Chief. This played a big role during the Cold War and the Second World War. 9/11 saw Bush taking on a role of a wartime president, and Obama can be argued as a wartime president in terms of Libya and Syria. Congress had not yet declared war since 1941, but has been involved in lots of combats, such as Korea, Vietnam, and Iraq, although these have been mainly done via the President rather than Congress. A Democrat-controlled Congress passed the Troop Withdrawal Bill in 2007, but Bush vetoed it, and the Democrats didn't have enough votes to veto his veto. So this shows that the role of the Commander-in-Chief is quite significant. Another foreign policy power that the President has is to propose legislation or set the tone for foreign policy. The President can set the tone through the inaugural address or the State of the Union address. The Bush Doctrine did this in 2002 with the State of the Union address, where Bush labelled the axis of evil when referring to the war on terror. America then started to take the offensive rather than playing the defensive in the war in Iraq. Obama did this with his soft power. He used diplomacy as the core instrument for foreign policy. However, you can look at the opposite of this. The closure of Guantanamo Bay, which Obama heavily campaigned for, never happened. Also, under Obama, drone attacks increased, and there was the largest offensive by coalition forces in Afghanistan in 2010. So you can say that whilst Obama used soft power, he was also quite powerful in foreign policy. However, in regard to setting the tone and proposing legislation in regard to foreign policy, there are contrasting examples. If you look at foreign policy, Congress dried up funds for the Vietnam conflict under Ford. They used their power of the purse, therefore checking the President. In terms of domestic policy, FDR was able to pass much legislation in the 1930s using the New Deal, as was President Johnson. And the War Powers Act of 1973 attempted to limit the use of troops without Congress's permission. This should be known as collective judgment. However, a president may commit troops to a combat zone. He must notify Congress within 48 hours of doing so. If Congress disagree, they can request that the president withdraws the troops, and this must happen within 60 to 90 days. All of these serve as checks against the president in terms of his foreign policy powers.